All right. Hello, hello. Check, check, check. Um, I hope everyone is having a good Sunday. It's a few hours earlier than my normal time, around 5:30 or 5:45, and I will explain that in a minute. Let me go ahead and take down this banner. Go ahead also if you can hear me. I just set up the mic and stuff, and of course with a new computer, audio configuration can be, uh, subjected to change, I guess sometimes. Uh, so anyway, before I do get this banner down, that sci-fi ambient that you heard, that was something I was working on. It's music I was working on for one of these days. I'm going to do an Asimov analysis, this video essay on his great short story, The Bicentennial Man. Actually, it's not really a short story; it's more like a novella, and it's such a good novella. It's so well structured, and I have this analysis that I've been meaning to do. I don't know when I'm going to do it, but I composed that music for that video, so it will come one of these days. So let me go ahead and hide that. But yeah, that is actually an hour long on my channel. I think the thumbnail says ambient music for creativity. So there we go. All right. Okay, so can you guys hear me? That's I'm sure you can, and I should check myself. But yeah, if I could have any confirmation, I see the halo and all that, but I just like a good confirmation. Um, but I guess confirmation is also no confirmation. If you guys couldn't hear me, you would say as much anyway. So before we begin, we'll welcome the chat. Okay, good. Brian says, I hear you. And Private Eye says, all good. And then Daniel Heron, my not one and only, but my second channel member. Thank you. Thank you for your super chat. I appreciate that super, super much. Yeah, I was going to welcome the chat, but the reason why actually, just to give you guys some clarity why I started a few hours earlier is the prof and I, we were going to mass, but the road as an emergency, maybe a windstorm or whatever, the road we take to church was blocked that afternoon, so we couldn't go to mass last night. So we're going to go to mass tonight, and that's around the time I usually stream. So that's why we're going to be a little early. I suspect too. Also, this is going to be more of a shorter stream, no more than an hour, because the topic I'm going to talk about is based on this article that is also very short. But before we begin there, let's go ahead and welcome the chat. We've got Brian Gilmartin saying, like they say, the early bird gets the worm, which is kind of funny because it's early afternoon, not so much early morning. But it's early to me. It's early to me. Actually, I haven't spoken yet at all, too. So I just realized you might be getting some sound engraver morning voice because if I can, I stay up quite late if I can, working on stuff, working on music and creative stuff. Also, the wedding, planning for a wedding. So yeah, I think I slept in just a little bit today too. Let me grab some tea. I am not all the way caffeinated either, but that's okay. We've got Dee Pensack. Good afternoon, Santa Graver. Hope you're doing well. I am. I'm doing well. For all things considered, it's just been steamrolling for both Professor Geek and me. Just of course with working two jobs. Professor Geek has his professor work, of course, and then he also has his daughter to take care of half the week, as well as just different appointments we have to do and just things we have to do, before getting married in 4 weeks. So I'm starting to feel the crunch, if that makes sense. I'm starting to feel like, okay, it's coming. There's no breathing space, but that's okay. There will be breathing space afterward. All right. And then we also have Samuli Olki. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. From Finland. Samuli probably is probably how you pronounce it. But I hope I'm reading your name like Samuel, but is it Samuli with the emphasis on mu? That'd be good to know. Brian also was wondering if I was going to talk about AI this week. I did promise that, but I haven't had time to prepare. So no, this is just going to be a rant on art, on Hollywood destroying art, and basically just tearing down the legacy of the deceased and thinking they have good excuses for it. So that's going to be my rant today. we've got a quote from G. Pensack: "Necessity is the mother of invention." I don't know who made that quote or who said that to make it a quote. So some enlightenment there would be nice. Elias Jones is here. The true, or the good, the true, and the beautiful can separate for a bit, but they all must ultimately converge. And I would say art is not just an imitator of that, but really the embodiment of that. Not art exclusively. There can be other things too, of course, like natural science and all that. But art really is that representative for such a thing. And Samulia says, I would guess that we shall discuss subverting the expectations or such. Maybe, you know what? It's not even that anymore. We've passed that time. We're no longer in those days. No, this is just straight up lying. This is, and I know that's strong language, but producers and quote creatives unquote are straight up telling you the opposite of what is true, or basically they're speaking for dead people. They're not even speaking on the behalf of dead people. They're outright saying, "Oh, this person would have loved this or hated this." I'm like, they're deceased. They can't speak for themselves, so don't speak for them if you really don't know. That's going to be the rant today. The point of this rant really will be basically it's I feel like it's my duty as an artist to at least preserve the legacy of what had come before the ultimate obliteration of all these silly streaming platforms saying otherwise. that's gonna be my rant. Sorry, my voice is kind of croaky. I didn't bother speaking until this point. I didn't realize that. Samuel Proctor, welcome. Perfect timing. Church just ended for me. Good. Yeah, I'm gonna go to church after this. So wonderful. All right. And it's been raining for most of the weekend, says Brian. Thank goodness. Over here too, we've needed rain. It's wonderful. All right. Anyone else? Eldridge fan. Yes, I recognize you from RJ from the Fourth Age. I think, right? You're on one of those streams. Lynn Green is in. Well, so welcome, Eldridge fan. What's the difference between a lie and a fantasy? Actually, the lie that I'm going to be talking about is actually not contained within the story. So that might be an interesting question to answer a different time. So thank you, Samuel, for the congratulations. And let's see. Eldridge fan. Oh no, Eldridge fan. Sorry, you're from Professor Geek stream. With the Star Wars. Okay. Oh man. Oh, I shouldn't mix that up. You say you're running into a lot of conservatives who don't even understand the point or purpose of fiction. Yeah, that's a problem too. That's a problem too. Again, that's a good topic for another video. So without further ado, let's go into the topic. And before I actually open up the article, I just want to preface by saying, you know, I'm at the point talking about the popular culture and the culture war, so to speak. I'm getting to the point, not apathetically. I want to be clear about that, but I'm getting to the point where I'm getting more and more inclined to just talk about good stories and good art and all that. But a couple things that made me want to rant about this was, one, I happened upon this Collider article, which don't take seriously. Journalism is just not to be trusted anymore. Let's just say that. And then also, of course, media concerning Hollywood shows and streaming platform shows and stuff like that. I do want to get the truth out and contend, or I would say create maybe a counter argument, so to speak, for this article. So that this article made me mad, so I want to rant about that. But also, RJ from the Fourth Age actually just released a video last night about not being tired about talking about the culture war. And on the one hand, I am tired about talking about the culture war. Like, I've grown to be very, again, I don't want to say apathetic, but I've grown to just not care about what's going on with Star Wars, even though I love Star Wars very much. And even with something like the Foundation show, which I'm going to be talking about with Isaac Asimov, I love science fiction, and I especially love the Foundation trilogy. I'm just about done with the book Foundation's Edge, which is the fourth installment, or maybe the installment right after the trilogy. I would probably say the installment. It's in the series. I mean, if you start with the trilogy, it'd be the fourth installment. If you add the prequels, it would be the sixth installment. So that's neither here nor there. But anyway, I really have enjoyed this old classic science fiction, going back to the classics, going back to what's been written in the pulp, not pop, but pulp culture. That is, 50s, 60s, 70s. Those decades of good classic science fiction. Um, and where was I going with that? Oh, yeah, so on the one hand, I really want to uphold that, but going back to what RJ from the Fourth Age was saying, is like, we really shouldn't tire about talking about the culture war, because it's gonna continue until it's won. And a lot of people will kind of just like poo-poo that argument and say, there's no such thing. They'll either say there's no such thing as the culture war, or you're taking it too seriously. And it's, you know what? If me just talking about what good art is and what good classic literature is, like with my love of science fiction, for instance, some people have a love of film, some people have a love of, old, 70s, 80s comics, the graphic novels, the American graphic novels. Everyone has a love for something involving what we call now pop culture. And it's it's coming to the point with me where I don't want to be talking about this. I don't want to be talking about Hollywood. And I'm talking about it less and less. Now that, Disney has made it clear what they want to do with Star Wars, it's like, well, you know what? You've made it clear. I know it sounds controversial. I know people would say this is a black pill. It's not a black pill. I promise you it's not. In fact, it's just necessary, really. Star Wars, the franchise as it is, needs to die, because it's not Star Wars. It's a parody, or it's a lobotomized form of Star Wars, but it's not Star Wars anymore. It might look like Star Wars. It might even have the feel of Star Wars, but it's not what it was, what made it Star Wars to begin with. And so Professor Geek and I, we're just, he will be talking about the EU on his channel more and more. But at the point where people are asking me, even I have relatives, my closest relative right now, she does not like what's happening with the Ahsoka show. She hates it. And I'm like, "Ah." She's like, "I don't want to spoil it for you." I'm like, "I'm not watching it. I don't care anymore." If Disney stopped producing Star Wars, that's gonna be awesome. And then when Disney stops producing Star Wars and stops producing Marvel, then maybe we've won the culture war. But until then, we have to keep putting it out there. As RJ says, we just have to keep putting it out there that we need to uphold what was good, what was true, and what was beautiful. And we shouldn't ever tire of that. Now, that all said, I won't be dedicating my channel exclusively to this popular culture topic. I really do want to uh, be finished with it, so to speak. And if my rants continue, then they'll continue, however organically or naturally. But it's something that it's going to be maybe like uh, I don't want to say afterthought. That's not the right word to use it, but it is. It's just, it will happen when it happens, like today. And then I'll talk about more science fiction and music and all that good stuff. But anyway, the culture war will have to be talked about until the war is won. RJ made a really good point where he said, the ideologues, what they want you to do is feel helpless and alone, and they want you to believe what you think is untrue, and it's only you who's thinking that. And in with my channel, especially with, I know I'm trying to home in on music specifically, but as an artist, it's really important to uphold what is good art. And even more than that, it's very important to me personally to uphold the artist themselves, whether living or deceased. And I find myself, the more and more, like with Tolkien and now with Isaac Asimov, I find myself having to this inclination to defend at least what they made, not who they were as people, but at least what they made. That's the whole point of this preface, getting into this stream. Eldritch fan, thank you for the super chat. You say yes, I agree 1,000%. It needs to go. Yeah. I mean, we're getting there, right? So I think with people who are against the ideology, of course, that has just run rampant in the last 10 to 15 years, especially, yeah, we can grow tired of it. We can say, oh, this again. And to that point, I want to make, yes, really focus on the good, but don't ever lose sight of the damage they're doing. It's super important. And as I've said before, time and time again, on my streams, maybe in my other commentary, this has been well established. This ideology has been well established in the arts since before World War One, and it really took off after that war. So it's not 10 years old. It's 100 years old, and we have to be mindful of that. But we'll get into the chat, and then we'll upload this very short article. And I think that's all. I think that's all I have to say with that. So Samuel Proctor, welcome. We can tire of it, but we must put our shoulders to the wheel until we make it. Yes, absolutely. And until the war is won. It's gonna be a long battle. It's gonna be a long battle. So hopefully Disney keeps losing money. Hopefully all these platforms keep losing money so they don't have to tarnish these books. All right, Eloise, welcome, Eloise. You say, I've always been of the opinion that the culture belongs to those who create. Yes, I especially agree with that. Let the outrage merchants do do their thing. The real culture connoisseurs lead people to greener pastures. And I'm 100% right with you there too, which I'm trying to do with my own art. And then I'm also trying to do with older art, and literature and eventually music too. All right. Okay, so let me grab some tea here and upload this article. This is Collider. It's not to be taken seriously. I just want to point out just a few things that they're patting themselves, on the back with, and it's a nuisance. So let me go ahead and share. Hopefully, Collider won't let me continue with the ad blocker. So they're like, "Don't block our ads." I'm like, "Oh, I gotta find a way around this." So instead of blocking the ads, they still have their ads, but like I just blew up the screen so you don't see the ads. You might see some ads coming up, but I'm trying to do my best not to have as much ads as possible. So I just don't like the ads publicly. I don't really mind them if I see them myself, but I don't want them on my YouTube video. So anyway, so just kind of in a nutshell before we begin, Isaac Asimov, really one of the giants, is really just among the top 3, top 5, top 10 giants of science fiction literature. And if you're not aware, Apple TV decided to do a show. I think they finished their 2nd season of the adaptation. And by golly, this is a loose adaptation. This is not Asimov. And the problem with this is that media and producers and showrunners with something like the Foundation series, they're not saying, "Oh, this is loosely based off Asimov." They're pretty much straight up saying this is what Asimov would have wanted. And you can't speak for a deceased person in that regard. If he wanted as much, he would have written as much. So let's go ahead and continue with this article. It says, let me go ahead and point it out, and yeah, there we go. Okay, so what the Foundation series does better than the Asimov novels? Okay, I hate that right there, because they're saying this TV show is better than the books. Again, these books have been in the public conscience, especially with sci-fi readers, for decades now. And so just to have the audacity to say that the series is better than the Asimov novels, it's like, why are you saying something you're adapting, that the adaptation is better than the original? If that is so, why didn't you just be inspired by Asimov's novels and then do something else, which they should have done? They absolutely should have done with this series. Moving on. Executive producer Robin Asimov reveals this is the series' strong suit. Now, I just want to say right up front, Robin, I think she spells her name with a Y, so these people aren't even double checking their spelling and how they're writing things out. But even more to the point, executive producer Robin Asimov reveals this is the series' strong suit. And who is Robin Asimov? Well, she shares the name. Let's go ahead and see. Okay, this is, by the way, this picture here, this is supposed to be Harry Seldon, and this is supposed to be Gail Dornick. Now, Gail Dornick is not really seen in the book. He has like 2 chapters. He meets Harry Seldon like a couple years before Seldon dies, and he's really it's I think it's knowledge that Gail Dornick, who is a man and also a psychohistorian, he's really the impetus that helps the Foundation move forward in the backwater on the backwater planet Terminus. Is that the right term? Backwater? I don't know. But Harry Seldon in the books, and you can see concept art of this man, of this character. Harry Seldon is at death's door when you meet him. He's a couple years before passing away, before he starts on this mission. And this guy really shouldn't be this young if he's Harry Seldon. And then Gail Dornick, yeah, I guess you can change genders, whatever. But what was did they want like a father-daughter relationship? I don't know. This is so weird. It's just so weird. But let's move on. So this is supposed to be Harry Seldon, which he's not Harry Seldon because Harry Seldon is an old man. I can't stress that enough. That's what makes him interesting. That's what makes him unique as a character. The supposed savior of the Foundation trilogy with this plan is an old man, and he commences his mission before he dies. That's cool. I don't know why they had to make Harry Seldon young. Okay, moving on. Robin. Okay, so look at this. Look at this. Robin with a Y, Robin with an I. Interesting. So I wasn't mistaken there. All right, so the big picture, 3 bullet points. What makes the TV shows, this television series stands out? What makes this stand out? I think I'm saying that grammatically correct, but I'm ranting, so I don't have to. Robin Asimov, the daughter of Isaac Asimov, is an executive producer for Foundation, and she brings firsthand knowledge of her father's vision to the series. Sorry if I'm slurring my words there. This is kind of, I would say this is pretty deceptive because basically, oh, she's his daughter, and so by default, she has every authority to greenlight whatever for her father's vision, to bring his books to the TV screen. That's a problem. And the one reason, or the one example I should say that we can look to it being a problem is just take a look at a couple generations after J.R.R. Tolkien with the Tolkien estate. No one is defending the legacy anymore of the Tolkien stories. With Lord of the Rings, people in the Tolkien estate, they're fine with the blasphemy that is Rings of Power. And where are his descendants? After Christopher Tolkien had passed away, no one in his family that I could see is defending his lore and his legacy and his English mythology. So we can use that as an example. With Robin Asimov, I don't care if she's the daughter of Isaac Asimov. Maybe they had a close relationship, but I don't know about that. Or maybe they had an estranged relationship. I don't know about that either. But it actually doesn't matter. Just because she's Isaac Asimov's daughter doesn't mean she should be executive producer. And unless she had a good version of the Tolkien estate, so to speak, unless there's like this Isaac Asimov estate and she is absolutely faithful to her father's vision. But what I have read about this show, I haven't watched this show, I'm not hate watching this show, but what I've read about the show is it's so different from the books. So different. And so it doesn't matter. She does not have the executive authority to greenlight her father's vision just because she's related to, directly related to Isaac Asimov. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So that's not a valid bullet point, so to speak. I'm getting angry, guys. I'm glad, because I was almost feeling a little apathetic to doing the story earlier this morning. I'm like, do I really want to do this story? Yes. All right, second bullet point. Isaac Asimov prioritized storytelling over character development in his writing, but Robin appreciates how the show has given life to the characters and elevated the story. So there are a couple contradictions with this second bullet point. The first is true. He actually did put in more of the timeline and the chronology of events inside the story rather than character development. But character development, in science fiction of the 1960s and 70s, yes, is very different. I will say, yes, it's true. You don't have the interiority. You don't have the introspection of these different characters. Well, actually, no, that's not true. Let me preface it by saying, yes, in the first book of the trilogy, with people like Salvor Hardin, you don't really see Gale Dornick after the first couple of chapters. So you don't really know his interiority at all. You see Hardin, for instance, or Mallow, for instance, react to situations and plan and take preemptive measures to take care of a situation. So you're very much at the external of the story in the books. It is true, there's not a lot of interiority. The interiority actually comes in the second book of the trilogy, uh, with a little bit of Beta Daryl, the protagonist of the second book, and then also the the main antagonist. And I'm not gonna spoil it. So if you guys, uh, the major faceless, if you will, villain, the mule, don't spoil. No spoilers of the Foundation trilogy, guys. I will block those comments on the chat. But the mule, actually, we do see a little bit later, there's a lot of interiority with the mule. So Isaac Asimov actually is capable of working with the interiority. Maybe not on the level of Arthur C. Clarke, but with something even like the Bicentennial Man, he can really create moving characters, like not just moving pieces inside the story, but he actually can really get you feeling for the character, even if this character, whether a main character or a featured character, has a very limited interiority. He knows how to work with character development with his stories. So it's not completely absent. And it's not even completely absent inside the Foundation trilogy. It's just not what we're used to in this modern culture, in this modern writing, where we have to just talk about our feelings all the time. And believe me, I love introspection, especially as a woman. As a reader and as a writer, I do love introspection. But I do want to make it clear that back in the 60s, unless you're working with like a character like Hal 9000, you're not going to be working with interiority like we see it today. So I'm going to make this argument, this is the second bullet point here, that it's not quite fair to say they're going to insinuate, I think, a little later in this article that he has no character development. That's not true. Even with people like Salvor Hardin and Hover Mallow, even with their short duration inside the books, because it expands, the Foundation trilogy expands, I think it's up to 300 years. I know by Foundation's Edge, it's 500 years. So it expands over 200 years, I think. I believe that's correct. I could be missing the timeline there. So each of these characters involving the chronology of events, yeah, they have a short duration. They have maybe a handful of chapters and then they're gone. They're deceased because you're moving on to the next thing. But they are very dynamic in their short duration. And I think people just do not have these sensibilities now to read older classic fiction because it's like, well, I'm not in this person's perspective. I don't know what their internal conflict is. It's like, well, maybe you don't need it for their short duration. Maybe you just cue and home in on what is the reaction to something, and that is pretty telling of the character as well. These characters are not. Let me put it this way: these characters, maybe for lack of introspection, they are about action. And that kind of makes sense if you have a male author, a man writing with predominantly male characters. And there's nothing wrong, by the way, of his series having mostly male characters. I enjoy them just as much as I would enjoy any other book with the same setting. So Anyway, that was the second bullet point. They're saying Isaac Asimov prioritized storytelling over character development in his writing, but Robin appreciates how the show has given life to the characters and elevated the story. All right. So the third bullet point, and this is the point that really grinds my gears. Having Robin Asimov on the production team allows the series to deviate from the original trilogy and incorporate elements from all 7 novels. Like, what right does any child, any sibling, any parent, what right does anyone have to work with and work with new material, deviate from the old material without consent of the deceased artist? This is a very troubling thing. Like, I don't care how close you are to your daughter, to your brother, to your father, to your mother. I- Love your family, but this is a weird take on the daughter of Isaac Asimov greenlighting because she's the daughter, saying, well, it's okay to deviate from the source material. It's okay to deviate from the original trilogy and incorporate new elements of all 7 novels. And by the way, you know how they do that? See, people, modern day audiences and modern day writers, they don't like the idea of a 1,000-year timeline spanning over, 7 books, right? Like, no, we don't like 1,000 years. We don't like all that history. We got to make all the characters in the same timeline. So a character that's like 200 or 250 years from another character, they're all in the same lifespan. They're all in the same lifetime. It's like, you guys, you should have done something else instead of Asimov. Why are you doing Asimov? Anyway, let's move on. So anyway, just because she's his daughter, that's not valid. That's not any excuse. All right, skip the ads. No, I don't want to skip. Just pause. All right, one of the biggest, so moving on here, one of the biggest behind the scenes elements of Foundation, the show, is that the sci-fi series is in the best hands possible. Why? Because she's his daughter. Robin Asimov, the daughter of the author who brought Foundation to life, acts as executive producer. So you're repeating yourself, which means that she has firsthand knowledge of the elements that her father would like to see on the screen. In an interview with Collider's Therese Layson, Asimov, I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right, Asimov, the daughter, Robin Asimov, revealed what she likes best about the Apple TV series. During the interview, Asimov, Robin, I'm just going to say Robin because I feel like it's a little on the disingenuous side when she's not being initialed, like R Asimov, or Robin. During the interview, Robin addressed one frequent criticism that readers used to make about her father's body of work. A prolific writer, Isaac Asimov penned over 500 stories in his lifetime. He was a very prolific writer, sometimes alone, sometimes alone, sometimes along with other writers. That means the acclaimed writer was more interested in getting his ideas on paper than to work on the characters he created to tell those stories. What moot point is that? Like, I'm a prolific writer and I wrote so many stories in my lifetime, 500 stories. But it, like, how did they come to that conclusion that because he wrote so many stories that he was more interested in getting his ideas on paper? Like, I'm sure it's pretty possible, especially if you write short stories. It is absolutely possible to get into character development on a very quick, at a very quick pace, and still be able to write 500 works in your lifetime. It's like, oh no, because he wrote so many stories, he only cared about getting his ideas on paper, not so much the characters. I'm like, that's dumb. In fact, I would say, I'm going to go on a limb here. I haven't read all of Asimov, but many of his short stories really work with character development, even in their short span, even in the short duration, their time on the page. Very, very much. Very good, very relatable characters with stakes, with very major high stakes. And yeah, you can't develop them like you could a character in a television show or in a movie. I understand that. But to cheapen Asimov, thinking he's not a writer of character development just because he wrote over 500 stories, this is an invalid point. This is so dumb. they're making the equation is like, because you write so many stories, you can't work on character development. It's impossible. It's like, that's not true. You don't know anything about short stories. You don't know anything. Like my professor, for instance, he is a very capable writer when it comes to short stories, and he can work with character development. So, oh, people are just so ignorant of this kind of thing. And this is his daughter, revealing as much. All right, going into her quote. Before I do that, let me go ahead and check. Yeah, everything looks good. All right, everything looks good. All right, so going into her quote, she says, "I love the character development. This was not my father's strong suit." That's not true. She doesn't know her own father's writing. And not necessarily his interest per se. That I don't know. Maybe he wasn't interested, but he still was capable of doing such character development. It was all about the storytelling. And he did that so well that it was okay that his characters were a bit flat. That's also an untrue. Just because they didn't have any interiority or internal conflict, and some of them did, by the way. Some of them they did struggle with conflict, but they would confide their struggles with like an associate or with like a political partner or something like that. They would be confiding in a close, a confidant, like someone who's a friend or someone who's in their workspace. These characters, while having little to no interiority, they were not flat. They were not a bit flat. They had their own dynamics in their own special way, their own unique way. So this is moot again. This is an invalid point. Moving on, she continues. She says, "What David Goyer did was especially I love the Cleon story." So Cleon, if you're not aware, he's the emperor that contends with Asimov not Asimov, sorry, Harry Seldon on trial at the start of the book. Apparently they did this kind of clone dynasty with the story. Interesting, like, and a lot of people actually like that. A lot of people said, "I love this dynamics with the clone dynasty of the Cleon um, story." And it's like, well, then why didn't you just do your own story? If that was the strong point of this show that had nothing to do with what Asimov did, why didn't you just make your own original story based on this idea? Say, "Oh, we were inspired by Asimov's Empire, but we took it in this way." That would have been perfectly valid for them to do. And apparently a lot of people just love this part of the show. I was like, man, you jumped that opportunity there. You just were relying on Asimov's name. You were relying on the fame that his books had accrued over the decades. And then you decided just to do something different with it. Anyway, she goes on. He gave life to these characters and it brought the story to another level. Yeah. A level that he didn't procure himself, which I would say that makes it not matter. The story was great anyway, but I think if my father had lived to see this, I think he would have been very, very impressed. I know you're his daughter, but how would you know? How would you know that would be true? Maybe you were close to him all his life, and maybe he expressed such things to you in his time. But I feel very uncomfortable when people think it's okay to say, "This man would have been very, very impressed with this." It's like, but he's gone. Like, he can't speak for himself. What if he wouldn't have been impressed? It's kind of like what people are saying with Rings of Power now, like with the Tolkien estate. It's like they can wield the power to say Tolkien would have liked this. He would have preferred this had he lived in this time. It's like, you can't do that. You simply cannot do that. I don't care how close you were to Tolkien or to Tolkien's family. You can't say that. Like, to be honest, I'm close to my dad, and I don't know, like let's say he entrusted his music to me, and then I did something different with it, and then like years down the road, I'd say he would have wanted that. It's like, well, maybe he wouldn't have. I don't even know that about my dad. My dad's a songwriter, or he's working on songs. He hasn't published anything, but I would never want to disrupt the integrity of his music, even as a composer. If I had things that I think would work better because of how my mind works, I still wouldn't do it. Anyway, she goes on. My father would have loved to seen the characters come to life. Yeah, but they had their own life. They had their own vibrance. That's something that was not in his wheelhouse per se. It's like, yes, it was. You just don't know how to read your father's work. And I think that would have excited him. It's like the audacity of this woman saying this wasn't his specialty. Character development was not his specialty. I'm sorry I'm using that mocking voice. I probably shouldn't. I probably should have some respect. But the thing is, she's not respecting her own father's work. So I don't have the inclination of I'll be nice. I'll be nice, but it's like he knew how to develop characters. He knew. There are moments, especially in the second book and in the third book of his trilogy, where he knew how to work with interiority. You just got to read the books to see for yourself. And yeah, it requires a little bit more um uh you have to have some level of sensibility about how to read old classic literature. If you're used to reading the stuff now, yes, it's going to be different, but you have to look for it. And I'm not saying he's without faults. Isaac Asimov, he does have some weaknesses regarding his writing that I'm happy to talk about in a different video. But at the same time, I'm not going to go far as to say what's not true of his works. And this is what the show, and this is what the showrunners, and this is what the executive producers, including his daughter, are doing. All right, moving on. Now, sorry, let me just grab some water real quick. I can't believe it's 45 minutes already. I will have to wrap it up soon. I don't know the context because I don't watch the show, but just looking at this picture, this guy, this actor, I think he's the Emperor, and he plays the Emperor based on the little I know. Yeah, I can see he's got muscle and stuff like that, but whatever he's wearing makes him look like a strong woman, like a really tough, like military firefighter woman. It's like, why are you wearing this? Maybe I don't know the context. Maybe he was attacked. Maybe he was, some people try to ambush him or something like that, and his stuff was ripped, and that's all he has, and he's trying to survive. Maybe, but I don't know the context of this guy wearing this. Like it just makes look how feminine that looks. Even with his muscles, it's like I can't see your masculine build because look at that. Anyway, let's move on. Robin Asimov is overseeing all decisions made in Foundation. Joy, joy, joy. Awesome. So having Asimov's daughter on the production team was certainly one factor that allowed the series creator David Goyer and his writing team to play around with the Foundation novel series and not stick strictly to the original trilogy. That's kind of an unfair wording there. It's like not stick strictly to the original trilogy. It's like, no, basically you're saying, hey, let's do whatever we want with the famous name and the famous series. That's all you're doing. And I have heard the name David Goyer, of course, by Professor Geek and Fan Man. I don't know to the extent of the damage he's done to DC, but apparently he's doing some damage now to the beloved sci-fi classics. Oh, he just needs to retire and go away. All right, so continuing on, she says, or this article says, that's why we've seen elements from all 7 novels across the series. That's so bogus. That means you don't know how to adapt Asimov. Like, what's the point of adapting the Foundation trilogy when you do not know how to adapt to film the span of at least 500 years? If you can't do that, if you can't generate enough interest to do that, then don't do it. Just don't. Oh, we got to make all the characters together. Harry Seldon has to be young. Gail Dornick has to be like a daughter figure, and Hober Mallow, his name is Mallow. Sorry, he has to be in the scene too, while all these characters are living. Like Salvor Hardin is 50 years after Gail Dornick. Mallow is, I think, 150 years after Gail Dornick. Don't do it. Sorry, ranting. Just, yeah. All right. So, continuing, this is why we've seen all elements of all 7 novels from the series, including the presence of the android Demerzel, who doesn't exist in the original trilogy from the 1950s, but was created by Asimov for the prequel novels in the 80s. So I have not read the prequels yet. I will read the prequels. So I don't know anything about this character, so I can't really comment. But based on what I've seen with everything else, they probably haven't done this android justice either. So, okay, now it's listing all these great actors and stuff. So, and to this point, even though Apple TV Plus is yet to announce the season 3 renewal, has told Collider that all episodes have already been written. Well, hopefully it doesn't come to fruition because, oh, that's it. That is the stream. Or not, well, yeah, it'll be the stream soon. That is the article. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing and be good with that. So anyway, sorry I got a little angry. Hopefully you heard all that. Hopefully nothing cut out or anything. So let's go ahead and look at the chat. And within the next 15 minutes, I'll have to leave to get ready for mass. But yeah, yes. Deep Pensac says, yes, backwater is correct. Yeah, I thought I used that term. Sometimes you forget the meaning of words when you're streaming live. So yeah, Samuel Proctor is absolutely right. It's just pure nepotism. Yeah, this is insane. Like, there would have been much better, much more capable hands at work with treating Asimov, the original trilogy, seriously. It's like, no, you can't be adaptable. They can't, or you can't adapt all this to the screen. It's like you can find a way. And actually, you know what? The trilogy really would work as a TV series, much better than movies. So they had that right, but they didn't do it right. All right, let's continue. All right, you guys are talking amongst yourselves. Let's see, Sound Engraver. Eloise says, oh, sounds like Asimov got some of his own medicine. Asimov shared their far left ideology. Yeah, but I'm gonna defend Asimov in this way. I know he had his left-leaning tendencies, but that doesn't matter in the context of the book. I mean, even if something like the Fall of the Empire had some political context, you know, some meta narrative to his own beliefs of how civilization works, it still works as its own story. And now I'm not disagreeing like with you, but just wanting to be fair within the context of the story. His trilogy, if there's any ideology, oh, let me double check something. I have a message. Oh, okay. Thanks. Thank you, my prof. Okay. Sounds good. He sent me a message. So it looks like I have a little bit more time to converse with you guys on the stream. So Aloise, I'm not disagreeing with you on that. Like, yeah, I mean, if you follow an ideology that's going to do this, especially that's done this for over 100 years, you're going to have your own comeuppance as an artist. I'm not really defending Asimov as a person. I'm defending the integrity of his work, and I think that's important. People, this is a whole other topic, and it would take a little bit of prep, you know, some preparation on my part before I made such a position and a statement. But the danger of this whole, you know, all these politics and all the politics and the meta narrative of these franchises and now classic literature, people say, well, and again, Aloise, I want to be careful. I'm not saying you're doing this, but it's very easy for us to have this inclination to say, well, because this person was this, therefore this was bound to happen. And that might be true of maybe Asimov as a person. So I'm not really defending him as a person, but I want to defend his body of works, especially if he was very, very political in his days. And I think he was very forward. I think he was forward about talking about atheism and stuff like that. I've seen a couple interviews of his. I would have loved to talk with him. He seems like a pretty interesting guy to talk to, you know, over some coffee or whatever. Even if he and I would probably fundamentally disagree on many, many things. I would just say his stories, the stories that I have read, his short stories, and then also something like the Foundation trilogy, is very, very light on current political commentary. It does not disrupt, it does not disrupt the flow of my reading experience. In fact, one of my favorite short stories of his actually has environmental implications. It has a little bit of feminism and it has a little bit of save the environment kind of thing that I think these days have taken it onto an extreme level. But even so, it didn't bother me because the story was really, really good. And so I want to be mindful of keeping the work intact. If the work itself does not have the propaganda, I'm going to defend it. I'm even written by someone who would be leagues different from me in politics and religion and philosophy and all of that. If the body of work is something I treasure and I respect and I enjoy, I'm going to defend that body of work. And so something like this is, this rant I have against the showrunners and these producers of this Apple TV series is more for maintaining the integrity, preserving the integrity of the art itself. To me, it is the art itself. And I can understand that the inclination of saying, well, because this person was this way, he had it coming to him. It's so easy for all of us to do that. But at the same time, if I'm not defending the artist, I'm going to be defending the art and the legacy of the art itself. Now, with someone like Tolkien, I'm going to defend him. Someone like C.S. Lewis, I'm going to defend him as a person, but also their body of works. So anyway, hopefully, I hope you weren't discouraged. I wasn't strictly disagreeing with you, Eloise. Just there is that danger of, wanting, to stick it to people who might have different philosophies and worldviews and all of that. But if it can defend the artist, then or excuse me, if I can defend the art, then I will do it. I have a channel member, Gigawatt. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. Oh, that's great. Can I pull you up? Can I pull you up? There you are. Awesome. Yeah, Gigawatt. Thank you. Thank you. And actually, just on channel membership, so up until the end of the year, it's just, I think it's $1.99. And for my separate videos, I didn't do this for my last 2 videos, and I'm kicking myself for it. For my separate videos, I will have mentions of I kind of want to do it before the video so people can watch right before my commentary the names of my YouTube channel members. If it doesn't work in the flow of the video, it at least will be at the very end of the video with some nice sound and music and stuff like that. So yes, I'm going to include your name, Gigawatt 1.21, if that is okay. If you don't prefer that, then just let me know, but I'll put your name up when I mention my special thanks to my channel members. Awesome. Thank you. And then once 2024 hits and I have some breathing space, I can see what other benefits I can do for different membership tiers. Yeah, this is okay. So first of all, I'm going to put this up. Sound Engraver's angry voice is a slightly raised voice. Sorry. And again, this is kind of my morning voice too, so it's kind of croaky. So my apologies. Lynn Green says it almost feels like they want to smash the prequels and the first novel all into the first years, just like Amazon's Rings of Power plans to smash the second age into 5 years. Yeah, it's so weird. Like that's just an admittance that you do not have the respect and the patience for a long time span. This is especially true of Asimov's world, because at the start of the trilogy, and of course in the prequels, I haven't read the prequels, but at the start of the trilogy, you're dealing with an empire of how many millions of worlds is it? It's millions of worlds. That's going to take some time before it collapses. And it does take time. Harry Seldon doesn't see the collapse of the empire. I don't even think Hardin and Dornick witnessed I don't think they feel the effects of the collapse of the empire. They are well, no, that's not true. The Empire does what happens in the books is so Terminus is on the periphery. It's not part of like the core main worlds inside the galaxy, near uh, what would be close to the Milky Way, like the center of the Milky Way. So Trantor is really at the core of all the empires. Like, that's the planet. That's where the Empire is. That's where the Emperor lives. And that's where the people who live there is like 40 billion. Is it 40 billion? Yeah, it's 40 billion people on a planet on a very smaller than Earth, and they go down. They dig down, 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 and all these people that live on this planet Trantor, those are admin people. Those are the people that work directly for the Empire, and then the neighboring worlds are just it's parts of the civilization. But Hardin and Gail Dornick, well, especially Hardin, while he's on Terminus, he's feeling the effects of the Empire not aiding the Foundation on Terminus, because there's going to be more of the Empire is conserving. It's reserving its own resources to protect itself so it won't collapse. And so Hardin, 50 years after the events start taking place with Harry Seldon and his death, he's seeing the effects that the warlords around the periphery are trying to get to Terminus and trying to conquer Terminus, and then they're warring amongst themselves, and then the Foundationers initially believe, oh no, the Empire is going to protect us and stuff like that, and it's like, well, no, actually the Empire is trying to save itself, so it's withdrawing all its resources and protection and law, and leaving these backwater worlds to fend for themselves. And so you're seeing a long-term trajectory of the Empire collapsing. So this whole thing about like, we gotta shove 500, well, not 500 years. I think it's about 200. It's between 200 and 300 years of all this story into a really short setting. It's like, yeah. Anyway, makes me mad. If you can't tell, makes me mad. All right. Brian Gilmartin says, sounds like this writer's idea of character development is just pointless navel gazing. Probably. Yeah. Yeah. Well, what's development in the modern day era? It's like, oh, I gotta express myself. It's like, I don't want you to express yourself. Like, I was kind of thinking about this idea this morning, and it's like, I know people, especially the more I release music and stuff like that, they'll say stuff like, I know it can be told me, or it's been told to other artists, I use my art to express myself, or maybe told to the artist, you use your artist to express yourself. And it's like, yeah, in a way, but I just produce music that I love hearing, and I just want to bring the same joy to other people. It is my imagination and my creation, but it's not. I don't have to tell you my opinions. Like, you guys come to my channel for my opinions, like on my live stream, and that's what I'm expressing myself in that way. But as far as my music, like, you can be fundamentally opposed to me as a person, and if you still like my music, that's okay. I don't have to express myself and who I am in my music. I just love good music, and I want to create good music. All right. Samuel Proctor says, so you like interiority in books? You must have loved Dune. I've read the first book of Dune, and I did enjoy it for what it was. I do want to eventually read Children of Dune, and then also God Emperor of Dune. I really do want to read those. I have to admit to you guys, like, I'm really picky about my science fiction. And I remember reading Dune when I was really sick. And then, no, I finished the book. Then I got sick. This was a couple years ago. I had the flu. And so I really only had the energy to like watch videos. And so I'd watch really good video essays of all the books of Dune. And I have to say, it depressed me so much that I probably have to read Dune like one or two books every 5 years or something like that, because it's not dark, but it's so serious. Like, like, no one can say Star Wars is like Dune, because Star Wars is very uplifting. I mean, in some ways, Darth Plagueis is a little brighter to me than Dune. Anyway, Brian Gilmartin says, I feel these people can't relate to a person of action because they themselves lack the conviction to be one themselves. It's always easier to talk about problems than to do something about them. And that's the case with Asimov with his very dynamic characters. For however handful of chapters you are with him, they take action. They take action. And you know what they are? Each and every one of them. Even when they're struggling with, even when you can see a little trace of doubt and a little bit of conflict when they confide with their confidants, even with their doubt, they do not display doubt publicly. So if they're a political figure or if they're a force to be reckoned with, like a merchant dealing with like, you know, impulsive generals and stuff like that, or other emperors or whatever like that, if they ever have a trace of doubt, they don't show it. They're saying, we're going to go on trial. I'm going to show how wrong you are. And even if they have doubt, they don't show it publicly. I think that's a trait. I think that's a trait that we can all emulate. Like, don't talk to me about your doubts. I mean, yeah, if you are going through some rough patches in life, like especially if you're like in my church or a work associate, that's fine. I'll listen to you there. But when it comes to people, especially in political offices or in positions of leadership, even if they have doubt, man, when they display confidence, that is almost a virtue, I would say. It's not being deceitful. That's not a lying tactic. That's like, oh no, the reason why in cases of Mallow and Salvor Hardin, they have to display confidence just so they can get their task done, even if they're struggling with something internally, like, oh, is this going to work? They have to get their mission done, and that's a really good thing. So yeah, these characters in the stories are people of action. They're not of internal conflict. They just get the job done. They don't want to talk about their feelings. They got too much work to do. And I like that. Now my stories that I'm writing will have a blend of interiority and what's going on externally. So um the way Asimov writes, you can't really get away with now. You just have to appreciate it for the time it was written. That's what I will say. Yeah, well, I'll probably do a separate video on that. I did actually one stream a year ago, so about why you shouldn't today write like Asimov, but that's not discrediting Asimov for what he did in his time. All right. I guess it never. You continue. Oh no! You're saying wonder how they'd feel about the first 4 Phantasy Star games, whose whole timeline is at least 2,000 years. Guess it never occurred to them that some people don't waste time when working on their projects. Yeah. Let's see. Brian Gilmartin says hot take interiority is overrated. Well, I think it can be well done. So, as far as sci-fi writers go, to Arthur C. Clarke, especially with his 2001 Space Odyssey, he does interiority. He does interiority with like, not cavemen. That famous scene where it's like the gorillas and they're on 2 sides and one tribe of, is it gorillas? Monkey people. Not people, but like, you know what I mean. I think they're monkeys in the movie. And I think they're monkeys in the book. It's been years since I read the book, but like there's this lead monkey who wants to like dominate the space where the monolith stands. And you go into his interiority, this lead monkey who's not so he can't communicate like a human being can. And then you go into the interiority of HAL 9000. It's one of my favorite scenes in that book is the interiority of HAL 9000. You cannot convey that in the film, but the film still does the story well. It's a good movie. It's a classic. But the actual interiority and HAL 9000 contemplating death and should he be scared for trying to do his mission, but these astronauts are trying to stop him, is so good. So I would say Arthur C. Clarke, at least with Space One, the Space Odyssey series is pretty good. It gets a little weird. I like the first 2 books. I don't remember liking the 4th book. There are 4 books. And I can't really remember what happens in the third book, to be honest. Oh, I do remember what happens. It's okay. It's okay. Uh Iche Mono, is that how you I'll never know how to pronounce your name. I'm sorry. Welcome. They just hired her to validate their mediocrity. Well, really to validate their mission to destroy his works. Yeah. Yeah, very good. Let's see, moving on down. Luke Sampson, I have not seen you. Welcome. You say those costumes look bad. You know, I said this before. Asimov, his stories, both his short stories and the trilogy. Oh my gosh, it has such a unique look about it, and I just don't like. It sort of looks like sci-fi, but it looks like generic sci-fi. Like now, generic sci-fi looks great visually. I'm not saying it doesn't look good, but man, Asimov. Oh my goodness, if they just who's the concept artist for Star Wars? Like, is it Ralph McQuarrie? Uh, I think that's his name. You know, he did a fine job with Star Wars, beautiful concept art for Star Wars, and I think he did some for the other sci-fi main writers of his time. I'd have to look, but but when you just look at old pulp sci-fi classic art, especially involving Asimov, you get a feeling just with the colors, with the angles, with the architecture. You just get this very unique feeling. And so I would say I haven't seen the show. I don't watch it. I will never watch it, but it just looks so like this could be any story. That's the problem with writing and costuming, costume design. Like the costume work getting into Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, that is exclusively that is particular to Lord of the Rings. You see those costumes, you're like, that's Lord of the Rings, that's Middle Earth. With costume design now, it's like this could be any story. It's like with music, like people are like, "Oh yeah, Wonder Woman's theme was so good." I'm like, it sounds like it could be used for anything. It doesn't sound like it could be used. It could. I personally didn't like it. I never saw the movie, but I heard her theme, and I'm like, that's not Wonder Woman. But even if you think it's Wonder Woman, you can't argue that it's exclusively Wonder Woman. It's like this could be used for like a stampede of beasts, you know? It's like anything. It can be used for any scene is what I'm trying to say. Um, Elias Jones says, I think I disagree with you there. I think legacies can be inherited and we could be speakers for the dead. I'm not saying we can't be speakers for the dead, but we can't speak out of line for the dead, if that makes sense. But we also can mistranslate the dead. I guess I'm not too individualistic after all. I don't know, but yeah. But now is Miss Asimov, you're asking also, is she actually trying to inherit and continue the legacy or cash grab it? Again, I don't know her motives for wanting to change what he changed. People might argue saying, well, you can't adapt the trilogy into, film. I was like, you can adapt the trilogy for a TV series. You absolutely can. It's definitely manageable. The fact that I see a lot of contradicting things between the books and what Apple TV series is doing, it's like, I don't know. Aloise says, I get your point, Sound Engraver. I'd like you to someday talk Asimov with Jay Ishiro Feeney. Yeah, I think he's talked with the prof at one point. Ishii knows a lot what went on behind the scenes. Asimov and his crew did cyberpunk dirty. Oh, you mean Robin Asimov? Oh no, Asimov and his crew did cyberpunk dirty. Yeah, I know people probably will come to this stream because I might do cut out the main article part. They might come at me and saying, "Well, Asimov was a horrible human being." It's like, yeah, but his trilogy wasn't horrible. I'm defending the trilogy. So yeah. Olkey says, I am glad that Hollywood seems to have dropped the Lovecraft biography. They would butcher his image. Probably so. Well, that's good that project was dropped. I don't know anything about Lovecraft, but I know he's well respected. Alois says, oh, you're talking to D. Pensack. Bezos wanted the foundation to be Asimov's Expanse. Ugh. It's not The Expanse. It's different. Just like you wanted Rings of Power to be the Game of Thrones. See, that's a problem. See, everyone thinks everything has to be Game of Thrones. It's like Game of Thrones is Game of Thrones. Asimov is Asimov. Rings of Power should have been loyal to the legacy of Middle Earth, but it wasn't. Whatever. Oh man, all of this makes me mad. See, before streaming, I'm thinking I don't really care about this anymore, and then when I start talking about it, I I get worked out. So anyway, let's continue with the chat. Lynn Green says, first half of Foundation to Empire, last gasp, attempting to destroy the Foundation uprising. Exactly. Yeah. No spoilers though. No spoilers. But you're just giving the timeline. Thank you. Yeah. So let's see. Oh wait, was it the second half? You're asking, was it the second half was 100 years later? To be honest, I couldn't keep track. Here's what I know about the timeline, Lynn. Foundation's Edge, right, the book right after the trilogy, so after the Mule and stuff like that. That's like 2 years before 500 years. Excuse me. Samuli Oki says only the first Dune is very good. I barely got through God Emperor. Utter gobbledygook for the most part. Really, because the premise looks really, really interesting. God Emperor of Dune is probably the one book I want to read of that series besides the first book. Yeah. Yeah, you're saying, okay, so I'll put this up. Ralph McQuarrie is the concept artist. Yeah, he's good. Oh, I don't know how you pronounce, yeah, is that how you pronounce it or say his name, spell his name? Yeah. And Sandra Proctor also says Wonder Woman's theme was so annoying. Yeah. So that was my rant. I think I covered a lot. I thought for such a short article, I had a lot of thoughts. But oh, what do I have here? Oh, I see. Oh, that's how you star the super chats. All right, there we go. I know how to do it. I didn't think I knew how to do it. All right. So what was I saying? Learning curve there. Kind of a boomer when it comes to these things. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't use that word disparagingly. So yeah, so just kind of as a recap, yes, I know the man Isaac Asimov is probably a very problematic figure. Like a lot of artists. Yeah, of course. I wouldn't be surprised if I come to learn in my life that all the sci-fi writers that I love would be fundamentally opposed to my beliefs, whether politically or religiously or philosophically or whatever. And I would say to an extent, there could be traces of those political leanings in their body of works. All I can do is defend the body of work or the art. So if I believe and respect the integrity of the Foundation trilogy, I will position myself in this way, like, well, if they're ruining it or if they're deviating it just because the daughter of Isaac Asimov can greenlight anything with David Goyer, it's like, well, I feel like it's, as part of my channel, being an artist myself, being a musician, a composer, and a sci-fi writer. I do write sci-fi. I haven't published anything yet. I'd like to actually publish some short stories next year. And then my longer body of works, probably a few years down the road, that will be really important to me to do. So all I'm saying is, like, let's say I publish my stuff and then years after I am gone, people would want to take my work and then just mess with it and deviate from the original integrity and essence of that work, with the argument that, like, well, she's behind the times with her work. Let's say this is 100 years from now. It's like this is a good body of work, but we're going to change it up a bit. We're going to change the motives of the characters. We're going to change the interiority of the characters. We're going to change the genders and the ethnicities of these characters, even though I do have a diverse cast. It's like, oh no, this is a problem that she's this ethnicity or whatever. or this person here is this person, and we're gonna change that. And then, oh, she was a Christian. Oh, well, we have no problem changing her body of work there because we're fundamentally opposed to being Christian and stuff like that. It's like, no, you, you don't have to share my faith or my religion, but please maintain and preserve the body of work that's there if you plan to use it. If you don't like it, don't read it, don't bother with it, but don't change it. This is the problem. Um, I think a lot of, I would say both people politically on the left and on the right, they look at the enemy and say, well, it's all fair in what with love and war. No, I don't think I use that phrase correctly, but it's like, well, this is war. This is all about the culture war. No, that's not the culture war. You preserve the integrity of the thing. I will always be about that, even if even if the artist, and I'm probably gonna get some flack for this, and I'm okay in this position, even if the person was an outright commie, but there was no trace of that in the body of works. It's just a sci-fi story. Well, I'm not that myself, but I will never undermine and never replace and never deconstruct and reconstruct someone else's body of work. I have too much respect for art to do that, no matter how different they are from me. So anyway, I know that's probably going to get a lot of flack from different people, but that's just my position. All right. I'm getting a little silly. So let's see. All right, Brian is heading out, and I think this is a good place to stop. I would say. I thank you guys for enjoying the early stream. I'm gonna go ahead and get ready myself, but I really appreciate you guys listening. And you know what? I will always have this channel to promote good art, stories, music, the like. But from time to time, there still has to be that defending. You know, at least if not the artist, at least the body of work, just so we maintain the good, the true, and the beautiful. If 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 I have to maintain the true exclusively, then I will maintain the true, but also the good and also the beautiful. And sometimes that requires, you know, telling straight up that these people, these creatives, so to speak, they are outright lying about the body of work. And whatever you think of Isaac Asimov, his political leanings, what he did in his life, to be honest, I really don't know all his life. I just know his works. Whatever he did that I would disagree with, I would just say he at least has he's maintained the human dignity to at least keep his works intact. That's all I ask. I meant to say something else with that sentence, but I lost my train of thought. So anyway, Ulki says, great stream. Take care. Actually, Gigawatt, I promise this has to be a video. This has to be a video, whether a stream or a different video. You ask, is it possible to separate an artist from their works? I think so. And the short answer I'm going to give now, and people will not like me for this, the short answer I'm going to give now, yes. You can separate the artist from their body of works. I actually have examples of that I would like to share at another time. Here's but people might I'm already hearing the arguments. People might say, well, then wait a second, like, do you support propaganda then? I'm like, no, because propaganda isn't art. If the person has a political leaning, but they do not express as much inside the story or in the art piece, that the art stands alone, irregardless of what you see and how you view it or how you read it or how you watch it, or how you listen to it as far as music is concerned. If the art itself stands alone, irregardless of who the artist is, what they believe in, I think that's pretty important. I think that's pretty powerful. Again, I have high respect for art. But there are some nuances that I'd like to cover because it's not like a black and white argument. There are a lot of nuances to that. So I don't want to say absolutely no question, black or white, night and day. I'm like, no, there's some things to be talking about. But yes, the short answer, yes, gigawatt, I would say I think so too. Anyway, I think we'll end it at that. So we'll just read the last couple comments and then we'll wrap it up in a few minutes. All right. I I don't know what Eldridge Fan is saying. Samuel Proctor is saying you're saying it depends on the artist. Some you easily can, and others it's very hard to. And it's because people who are propagandists, who are art saboteurs, even if they're talented, which a lot of them are not talented, if they use their art exclusively for their message, then it really does depend on your tolerance. I don't have tolerance for heavy, heavy messaging, both for politics and then also for something like the Christian faith. Like, Christian art has to be well done too. It has to be well done as well. So anyway, yeah, let's wrap it up for now. What's on the dock for next week? I'm gonna try to stream next week, and it's getting closer to the wedding, so time is a little iffy. I'm still working hard. We're still preparing for the wedding, but hopefully we'll maybe expect some videos coming out within the next week, and then I'll try to tune into my normal time streaming. So yeah, maybe next Sunday afternoon around 5:30. So anyway, thank you so much for watching and listening, and I will catch you guys next time. And as always, until I see you next, keep producing, preserving, and promoting that good art that you love.